Welcome to part two of the Patreon members series for power, accuracy, and speed. This is accuracy. I'm Kalani, your host and teacher, but you know that. So we're going to be looking at things you can do to increase your accuracy. And this basically is to help you get distinct tones so that when you play and you play different rhythm patterns, your tones will be distinct and discrete. It's not going to sound like everything kind of mushing together, right? A lot of these drums have 3 or 4 very distinct tones, and professional musicians, when they play, those tones are very clear, and they're different from one another, right? So you listen to a conga player, Giovanni Hidalgo, or any of your favorite conga players, or Mamadi Keita, or any of your favorite djembe players. When you hear them play, they're playing, whether they're playing fast or slow, loud or soft, the tones are very clear, and that has to do with accuracy. So accuracy is all about, it's really about technique, and it's going to relate to what we've already covered, which was building up your strength and your power. But accuracy is also very important for speed. So when we get to speed, we'll build on accuracy. So for now, here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to work on one tone at a time. And the, of course, most important thing is knowing how to make the different tones. And we're not going to cover that so much in this lesson. This lesson is how to use the knowledge that you have to become more accurate in your playing. So I'm going to assume that you've taken or you've watched lessons on how to play the different tones, but I'll use a couple tones as an example, so we'll review some of the best practices for producing those tones. It's about practicing efficiently and practicing perfectly, right? There's that saying, practice makes perfect, but actually perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice something incorrectly, you're probably doing more damage than good, right? So when we talk about accuracy, we need to start with correct technique and doing the technique as best we can. So that means we're going to do it slowly, we're going to pay attention, we're going to be constantly evaluating every tone. So just like we did with power, where we're focusing more on strength building and things that are going to help us with endurance, we're not really going to focus so much on rhythm patterns and playing music in this particular exercise, because we want to do something. This is to help us do that better, but we can't do that better by just doing that. Does that make sense? We're breaking things down and we're going back and doing some remedial work. Okay, so the first exercise area I want you to do is to play individual tones with one hand. And the reason I want you to do that is I want you to strip away as many variations and variables and things as possible so you can really focus on what you're doing. You can do this with a metronome, or you can do it without a metronome. I suggest maybe doing it without a metronome first, especially if you're more of a novice player, because you don't want to rush through it. You want to take your time. So here's what you do. Let's use the open tone as an example. And my best practices would say take this ring off. I'm going to leave it on right now because it's kind of hard to take off. So just forgive me for playing with my ring on. It doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really get in the way, so I think it's okay. So we're going to make an open tone on the conga drums. I know that I want to connect with my lower part of my fingers. I want it to be a full round sound, and I'm just going to focus on placing my hand in the right place where my fingers meet my palm near the edge. I'm going to focus on incorporating my percussive stroke. I'm going to focus on rebounding off the head so that tone is full. I'm not muting it. I am staying relaxed, and it's just a clean tone. And I'm going to listen to every single one of those hits. And if there's a hit that doesn't sound quite right, so I'll do one, and then I'll do one that's not sounding so good. Actually, that didn't sound that bad. I tried to relax and do what sometimes people do, which is like almost play like a slap, or sometimes people go, right? It's kind of muted. You're staying on the head too long. If I do that, I need to be listening carefully. I need to be paying attention. Maybe have a mirror there, again, like we did with power, and watch what I'm doing and make sure that my technique is what I want it to be. So I need to understand the technique first, right? So in this case, connecting with the drum, staying relaxed, focusing on the lower part of the fingers. But most importantly, listen. Listen to what it sounds like. Does it sound full or does it sound flat? If it doesn't sound like you want it to sound, you need to note, what did I do differently? What did I do that produced that result? Because I don't want to do that again. And you need to fix that. All right? So the first thing we're going to do is work on individual tones with one hand. Leave a lot of space so you can process the information. Don't try to do it quickly. Each tone is isolated. All right, so like I said, you could put a metronome on if you want, but you don't have to. Then, and that goes for, bass, tone, slap. See, even here, I have some variation. I kind of have to find the slap on this particular drum in this particular moment. Where is that slap going to come out the best? And so it takes a little bit of experimentation. Once you find it, then you need to find the consistency in that. Okay, then you're going to do one tone or the same sound with alternating hands. Why do we do that? Well, once we've found it with one hand, it's easier to teach the other hand how to do that. So one hand says, hey, I know how to do that. Oh, you do? Thanks a lot for inviting me and teaching me, right? So instead of mixing things up, just stick with, let's say, open tone, or it could be slap or bass, whatever it is. So you've got it with one, start to do it with the other one. Alternate and try to get them consistent. Incorporate your percussive stroke. So as you're doing that, make sure that you're incorporating best practices. You've got a percussive stroke that's fluid, that's moving, and then get that one tone with one hand, get that one tone with two hands. Now you probably know where this is going, where we're going to add another tone, right? So as you practice, once you've done one tone, one hand, one tone, two hands, do two tones, one hand. Okay, bass tone or tone slap. The reason we want to do that is we, again, want to keep things simple. You want to focus and, not have a lot of variability, not have another hand to worry about at this particular time. This is going to add a new layer of challenge. So once you've done all your basses by themselves, all your tones by themselves, then you can combine them. And you don't have to do one and one. You can do two and two. If one and one is producing too much sameness between them, or you're doing tones and slaps and they sound too similar, give yourself 2 or 4 hits of each one and then go to the other sound. So you could do, all right, 4 and 4. That might help you, but ultimately try to go to lead to 1 and 1, right? One and the other. So 2 tones. And then 3 tones. Then 2 or 3 tones with 2 hands. All right, so you can work up to an exercise that I like to use as part of my warm-up, actually, which is bass, bass, tone, tone, slap, slap, tone, tone. All right, and then once you can do that at a comfortable tempo, you can speed up a little bit. But this really isn't about speed yet, right? We're getting to that next. So let's review. We're talking about accuracy. So you need to pay attention, maybe have some way of monitoring what you're doing, either with a mirror in front of you or video it and watch it later. Your best indicator is going to be your ear, however, because look, it doesn't really matter as much how you're making the sound as much as that you're making the sound. So at the end of the day, if you're making the open tone that you want to make and that sounds great, sounds good to you, and it's meeting your expectations, then that's okay. It doesn't really matter how it looks so much. Same thing with the other tones. We talked about practicing one tone at a time with one hand, and then one tone with two hands, alternating, and then 2 or 3 tones with one hand, and then 2 or 3 tones with the other hand. And we talked about playing multiple tones and then switching to another tone when you're doing the multiple tones, maybe 2 or 4, and then switching to the other tone, and then 2 or 4, back and forth. But ultimately, trying to move towards one tone at a time, alternating, like bass, bass, tone, tone, bass, bass, tone, tone, or tone, tone, slap, slap, and doing your exercises that way, all right? But always evaluating and listening carefully. And here is when you could use a metronome, but maybe to keep yourself from speeding up too much or going too quickly. This is not about speed. It's not a competition to go fast. This is critical. It's critical in this stage of practice that you evaluate, you listen, and you make little changes. Right? We're not settling. It's not about just doing it. It's about doing it perfectly, as perfect as you can, making little micro changes, dialing it in so that you get the consistency that you want. Because consistency is accuracy, right? And accuracy leads to speed when it's combined with power, which is what we're going to talk about in the next lesson.